Hi there, I'm Matt Gemmell, an author from Scotland, and this is my video series for people who want to write a novel. This video is about inspiration. There are two ways that we use the word inspiration when writing. The first meaning, of course, refers to finding the initial idea for a story, and we'll talk about finding ideas in another video. The second meaning is the one I want to focus on today, and it's, of course, that vague concept of some sort of semi-mystical creative energy source we need to have a supply of in order to produce words. It's that meaning that we're using when we say things like, I wasn't feeling very inspired today, or I just couldn't find any inspiration. Now, inspiration in that sense is the most pernicious and damaging and counterproductive concept for those who want to make art and are struggling with it, because it's an almost universally accepted excuse for not just getting on with it. You don't need inspiration to start writing any more than you need to have an elevated heart rate and be sweating before you start the warm-up for your workout. Inspiration is something that happens as a result of a mode of thinking which is brought on by starting. That's the thing to understand. You don't need to wait for the right time to begin or the right frame of mind, because if you try, you'll just get nothing done on most days. We all already know that that's true, and as an artist, which you are, that is the truth that you need to confront and accept. Start before you get inspired. Start in order to get inspired. Just start no matter what. Now, I appreciate that uncomfortable truth sort of snatches away a significant crutch that we, very much including myself, we writers tend to rely on from time to time. So let me present it as a choice, without being sarcastic, a genuine choice, because there are pros and cons either way. So there's lots of advantages to the self-deception of believing that you need to feel inspired in order to even begin. I mean, you get to tell yourself that you're a writer and you're sort of trying to work, but you're being blocked by some kind of external agency. And you get to, that's a good one, you get to perpetually imagine how good your work might end up being without ever having to find out whether that's true or not. You also get to blame a mystical agency for the fact that your word count hasn't increased in months. The Greek muse of, what was it, epic poetry and eloquence was Calliope. And if you want to blame her for a morning spent scrolling Instagram or watching YouTube, then I'm sure that she would be very amused by that. On the other hand, the only thing in favour of just starting is that you will finish the book. And with that comes a lot of slightly unpleasant stuff. There's the editing and there's the showing it to people that might love it or might not love it. There's the whole production process, putting it out in front of people and then starting the next one. And whilst it'll be great once you've done all that, that doesn't sound anywhere near as enjoyable as languishing in artistic angst, because the muses aren't with you and inspiration hasn't struck in a while. Nowhere near as enjoyable. And of course, because the absence of something like inspiration doesn't make nearly as good a narrative, we have invented an antagonist to hang all this on, the dreaded writer's block. Now, I have been there. Believe me, I've been there for real and stared into the true face of it, and it's nowhere near as romantic as it's portrayed in TV shows and movies and just in our culture. You know, that bedraggled, tortured artist overindulging in tobacco and alcohol and pacing the bare floorboards of a shabby room, staring in hatred at the blank page, maybe tucked into the typewriter or the blank screen of the laptop or whatever. The reality of feeling blocked is nowhere near as textured and noble. It just feels like drip-fed failure moment by moment, hour by hour. It is not something to be courted or invited or even accepted. The good news is that writer's block doesn't really exist, not in the way that it's commonly thought of, at least. The clue is in the name. Writer's block. It's not creative block or muse's block or anything like that. It's something that comes from within the writer. We bring our own enemy with us to the keyboard or to the page. For writers, block is a state of mind that you get yourself into and which you can get yourself out of. The core of it is the scale of your thinking. When we think about a creative work, some big project, for example, a novel, we tend to focus on the gestalt of it, the whole thing at once as a complex entity, the whole story, the whole book, and our projections about it, our concerns about it, and that can be terrifying. It's paralyzing, it's intimidating, and block happens because of a mismatch between what you're thinking about and what you actually need to be working on at the time. Until you've finished the first draft, and maybe even after that, the only thing you need to actually be worrying about is what comes next. Let go of the whole overall story. Forget about that for now. Trust that it will find its way. The editing phase is also up ahead of you, and that's a good place to sort of hang your concerns about the big picture for now. And let me reassure you, we'll talk about editing more in another video, but it's also a lot easier than the writing. So put off those big worries. How does this go together? What's the overall narrative? And so on, until later. When you're writing, the job is just to keep writing. If you can write a sentence, one sentence, then by definition you can't be blocked. And I know that sounds simplistic and flippant and dismissive, but there's a sort of larger truth inside it. You've always got a sentence in you, one sentence, and that remains true after you've written that sentence. You've always got another in you. Block can't exist if your only goal, as is proper, is to just write one more sentence. Just answer the question of what's next. Suddenly the formless, intimidating, terrifying question of inspiration and where it's coming from is reduced to this much, much simpler problem. What happens next? There are basically three useful things to know whilst you're writing a book. What do I need to happen next? What do I need to happen later? And what do I need to happen eventually? But the only essential one is the first one. With a single newly written sentence, you suddenly see writer's block for what it is. It's just misplaced focus and concern on the part of the author beyond the immediate scope of what you're doing. It's an illusion of your own making, and we can dispel it just as easily. It doesn't matter what stage of the writing or even the planning or the editing that you're at, there's always something that you can do to get unstuck immediately. If you're writing, it's what's the next sentence? If you are proofreading, it's proofing the next paragraph. If you're planning, maybe it's refining or expanding a single bullet point. But the question to ask yourself is always, what's the one thing I can do right now to move forward, even just a tiny wee bit? While writing, it can sometimes feel difficult to find that next sentence, but you've always got a character in the scene. The character is always doing something or seeing something, reacting to something, thinking something. Even a little movement, a scratch of the cheek or wrinkling the nose, turning the head, whatever it might be. And there's always a thought, and there's always a feeling, and there's always something to notice and respond to or do. These tiny little things, they act like bridges towards the next narrative event of significance. And they are always there. We're never just frozen in the situation with nothing at all that we can perceive to come next. There is always another sentence. So there is always a way to break through this block that is just a misplaced focus beyond the present instant of the story. You can break that block in a minute or in a few minutes, and once you do, you're past the invisible barrier, and you can then look around and see that it was really just yourself staring back at you. Only you can stop yourself from being a writer today, and that means that only you can make it happen. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I'll talk to you again soon.